What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are enjoying this third day, this Thursday. That's right, Thursday is the third day, according to the great philosopher Joseph Tribbiani. It is Thursday, April the 10th, 2025, which means the Masters has begun. I tip my hat to you, my Masters hat. I was actually at the Masters this year in 2018, if that is not obvious. And the hottest take that I have about the Masters, that was the year that Patrick Reed won. Not necessarily a super popular guy as far as golfers are concerned among golf fans. The next year in 2019, you may recall Tiger Woods won. And I'm going to give you the TLDR version of this take. In 2019, when Tiger Woods won, I told everybody, because I had been there the year before, I said I would not have wanted to have been there for this, talking about Tiger winning. And the reason is, in case you're unfamiliar, obviously at the Masters, you don't have your cell phone, and there's so many people, so you're stuck in one spot on the property. It's an amazing experience, a magical experience, a once-in-a-lifetime experience, one I wouldn't give up, obviously. But that being said, because you're stuck there, you don't have your phone, you can't, this isn't, your standard tournament on the PGA Tour where you can kind of walk with guys throughout the round. You're just kind of stuck at one spot. And on something like the Sunday when Tiger Woods won the Masters, you were just stuck there because everybody was, there were throngs of people. And so, yeah, you may have seen something cool in your one spot, but you missed all of the context around the course. That's my take. I'm standing by it. And if you have anything to disagree with it on, or disagree on with it, if I could use my words properly, you can hit me up. I'm on social media, X, Instagram, Threads at RJ Ochoa, TikTok, RJ.Ochoa, Blue Sky, RJ Ochoa, email, RJ.Ochoa@SBNation.com. If you're watching live in the Bleacher Report app, and I am live in the Bleacher Report app every single Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can follow me in the Bleacher Report app right down below. You can check these shows out live, obviously. You can watch them on demand. You can also watch them on demand on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. What is up to our YouTube family? Like the video, subscribe. We have all sorts of fun stuff planned for you across next week, the one leading up to the NFL draft, and then obviously the week of the draft. And the draft is why we are here today. On Tuesday's show, we talked about, we talked about ideal candidates in the first round for the Cowboys. And we're going to twist that a little bit today. We're going to twist that in the sense of talking ideal permutations of the first three rounds. Rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 really matter. 4, not so much if you're the Dallas Cowboys, as recent history would tell us. But your top 100 picks are kind of where the hay is made, relatively speaking, for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, before we talk about proper permutations of the first three rounds for the Cowboys, I think it's important to look at some recent years and some context as far as what we're dealing with here to kind of assess whether or not we feel like the Cowboys landed this plane with their top 100 picks over the last few years. So let's take a look over at my friends at Pro Football Reference. Let me zoom in for you here. Here is the 2024 Dallas Cowboys draft class. And you tell me if you feel like their top 100 picks, this Cooper Beebe pick, by the way, the team did not have when the draft began. That came from moving down from 24 to 29 in the first round. We've heard the story a million times, but these are the four that we're kind of examining here. Did the Cowboys land this plane? I think, honestly, our biggest question at this point in time is about Tyler Guyton. And I think that we're kind of willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because of the pedigree that he was that he held as a prospect. Obviously, because we trust the Cowboys when it comes to first-round offensive linemen. Generally speaking, these first-round offensive linemen take off running pretty quickly. But, if Tyler Guyton took a little bit longer than the people who came before him, that is nothing to be ashamed of. That being said, I remain high on Marshawn Nealon. I think we all remain high on Cooper Beebe. And Maris Ufau really came along as the season ended for the Cowboys. So I think that, again, the purpose of this exercise is to discover and discuss the best permutations of those top 100 picks. And so, as evidence, they kind of matter. So let's look at a couple more years before we discuss this year's possible ways to shake things out. This is 2023. This is the miss. Obviously, Mozzie Smith, we're going into year 3 for this class, and we remain just very disappointed by this first-round selection. It is such a bummer. Luke Schoonmaker, I think, has had moments of potential promise. But again, we're in year 3 here, and he's not a starter. I mean, the fact that he was a second-round draft pick and is not a starter by his third year in the NFL spells trouble. And this is a unique situation, obviously. DeMarvion Overshown, when on the field, has just been incredible. But the reality, the unfortunate reality of the situation with him over the last 2 years, which are the years these players have been in the NFL, has been that he's been unavailable for most of it. Obviously, missing his entire rookie year, and then a lot of, or not a lot, but a good chunk of last year. And obviously, we have some questions, even though he's now wearing number 0, as to whether or not he's going to play at all in 2025. For what it's worth, I did write about this today on Thursday at bloggingtheboys.com. DeMarvion was on Up and Adams with Kay Adams, friend of the show, friend of Blogging the Boys, friend of mine, and mentioned that his goal, he kind of said the right things, is to be ready for week 1. That's what he's trying for. He was very measured about it, though. I would advise you to go. You should check out Up and Adams all the time. Kay's great, but you should watch the whole segment that she did with DeMarvion. And he said, look, I trust the people. I trust the medical staff. I'm probably going to open the season on the PUP list, but I'm training to be ready week 1. Again, it was kind of the right thing to say, sort of approach. But so if we acknowledge that the DeMarvion Overshown thing is unique, this is a really big miss, right? The class of 2023, these top 100 picks, again, we're 2 years removed. And here in 2025, the DeMarvion Overshown situation understood, you can't really count on any of these top 100 picks. That is not a way to do business in a proper sense in the NFL, which again is why this year's top 100 picks have to be essential, because we're only 2 years removed, as you can see from the class of 2023. And we have all sorts of questions about the top 100 picks. They're all eligible for contract extensions after this coming year. And so this is an important. I had error on my screen, but I think we're good to go here. So apologies for that little hiccup. Here we go. This is 2022. Home run right here, Tyler Smith. He should already have a contract extension. That goes without saying. We don't need to sing that song. I think we've done it enough times at this point in history. Sam Williams, again, a player that we have some questions about. It's unfortunate that he missed all of last year with his own torn ACL, but he has flash potential. And Jalen Tolbert, just a huge miss. And it's not for lack of effort. It's not for lack of trying. It's not Jalen's fault. But this is not a top 100 group that you can feel really good about. And this group is all currently, because Tyler Smith doesn't have a contract extension, they're all currently set to enter the final year of their rookie contract. Although even if Tyler doesn't get a contract extension, the Cowboys are obviously going to pick up his 5th-year option. We're not here to get into those weeds. But my point is, it's been 3 seasons for this class, the class of 2022. And we're just talking about top 100 picks, first 3 round selections, and you have 2 misses, right? Tyler Smith is a hit in respect, but you can see Tyler Smith was the 24th overall pick. You should be, we rightfully, fairly, objectively give the Cowboys a lot of kudos and a lot of credit for hitting on first round picks. But I mean, do you remember last year how there was the take floating around that all Howie Roseman did was draft based off of Daniel Jeremiah's big board, and that's why the media loved it? We could do that. We could go to the NFL mock draft database, like you and I, and we could draft somebody that would probably do well just based off of that kind of 30,000 foot perspective information. And so I don't mean to take away the credit that the Cowboys deserve for Tyler Smith specifically, because that was a pick that we all thought was stupid. So that being said, it was super impressive. It remains impressive. It was obviously critical now, especially in a Zach Martinless world. But that being said, you cannot have this many misses consistently with your top 100 picks. That's 2022. Let's go back to 2021, because I'm sure you're thinking, well, it can't be all bad, right? Like, it has to be better at some point in time. And 2021 certainly is on some level. You've got Micah Parsons. You've got Osa Odigizua. These are 2 second contracts in all inevitability, because we believe that Micah Parsons is going to get a contract extension from the team. The fact that that hasn't happened yet is its own situation that we're not going to relitigate. But again, just saying facts. This year, the Cowboys, the year we're looking at in 2021, had 5 top 100 selections. And part of it was because they moved down in the first round from 10 to 12 to take Micah Parsons. So you got Micah, awesome. Kelvin Joseph, huge miss. Didn't even see the end of his rookie contract. Osa Odigizua, big time, awesome playmaker. Well done. Chauncey Golston had a great final season with the Cowboys and parlayed it into a deal with the New York Giants. But there was some time where they were still trying to figure out what to do with him. And so it was a successful pick, I think. But, I'll give them credit for that one. But the Nashawn Wright pick, that was a huge miss in a lot of ways. And it was a miss at that moment in time. It felt like it was just a dude that Dan Quinn really liked. And good for Dan, I suppose. That was his first year being the defensive coordinator of the team. But so even if we give them credit for Chauncey Golston, I think we can give them like half of credit, right? You're talking about 5 total picks here in the top 100, and we're willing to give them credit for 2.5. Now, the Micah thing is interesting, but I have said this for literally years now. It worked out. All right. I obviously am very happy that the Cowboys drafted Micah Parsons, but it's important to remember that the evaluation on him at the time was as an off-ball linebacker. So picking him at 12 overall was a ginormous risk. It wasn't until DeMarcus Lawrence got hurt after the season opener and Micah had to put his hand down on the ground and rush the passer against the Chargers that they kind of figured out that he was amazing. And so sometimes luck is on your side. But that being said, I just don't give them like 1,000,000% credit for this. All right, last one before we look at permutations for this year. This is probably the last year in which we can say the Cowboys dominated the top 100 picks, right? Dominated their first 3 rounds. This is 2020. You got CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs, 2 different players on second contracts like we expect 2021 to be at some point in time. And Neville Gallimore was a really good player, right? I mean, he wasn't Micah Parsons or anything super, super special, but he was a very good player for the Dallas Cowboys. This whole draft class was pretty solid, by the way, because Neville was good. Tyler Biadasz was great. Ben DiNucci was a fun meme. Bradley and I, we all had high hopes for. But that being said, this is where we're going to stop looking at the past because you have to hit on these top 100 picks. And I think saying the point we just proved, right, in looking at the last 5 years was we kind of agree, right? You're saying to yourself, okay, RJ, I'm with you. 2020 was the last time that this team really nailed their top 100 picks. What does that really prove? What's the whole point of this discussion? Well, think about the fruit that tree, that planted tree kind of yielded, right? That was the class of 2020, and Dak Prescott got hurt that year. So, we understand that particular season is a little bit of a wash. 2021, 2022, 2023, 3 consecutive playoff appearances. Now, that's not just because of the top 100 picks that the Cowboys had in 2020 and CeeDee, Trayvon, and Neville Gallimore. But the point is if you hit on those picks specifically, you really plant a solid tree that you can eat off of for a legitimate amount of time. And so the Cowboys not getting that fruit from the classes, I can give them a little bit of credit. I know we just said it for 2021, but specifically for 2022 and 23, and it's early, but 24 sets you behind the 8 ball, which is why you have to nail these picks here in 2025. So let's get to an article that the great Danny Phantom wrote this week at blogontheboys.com a couple of days ago. As you can see, it's examining which wide receiver, running back, cornerback combinations would yield the best draft haul for the Cowboys. The objective of this discussion, the understood implication, is that the Cowboys will come away with each of these positions with their first 3 picks. That's the conversation that you and I are having. So the conversation then becomes, what's the best order? What's the best sequence to do this? What is the best way, the best possible permutation that the Cowboys can make if the goal is to come away with a wide receiver, a running back, and a cornerback in the first 3 rounds? Now, Danny talks about a lot of things, obviously, in the pros and cons to each position, but then he has some players listed at each position and their ranking according to the NFL mock draft database consensus big board. So these are the wide receivers, and we talked about a lot of them on Tuesday. You got Ted McMillan out of Arizona, Matthew Golden out of Texas, whose picture with Jerry Jones was circulating on social media on Thursday. Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. Right, like now we're getting a little bit deeper into the draft here. Isaiah Bond, who was in the news for some unfortunate reasons on Thursday. Obviously, there's a lot to be seen there. There's no real update that I have, at least. All I've seen is the Ian Rappaport tweet. But my perspective here, and I saw some of the comments on YouTube, were still team running back. I don't know that anybody is a big Omarion Hampton fan, but I think people still are hoping or clinging on to the hope that Ashton Jeanty falls to the Cowboys. But to me, the best permutation you can yield comes from one of these 2 players in the first round with the 12th overall pick. And as you can see here, these are their rankings according to the consensus big board. So you even get a bit of a deal here, obviously, in getting the 10th best player at 12 overall. At running back, again, Ashton Jeanty's a very special player. Obviously, he's 6th overall on the consensus board. But Omarion Hampton is 24, right? We're talking about a Cowboys team that has picks, 12 and 44. So reaching here at 12 specifically now sets you behind the 8 ball. If we kind of play the game here, right? If we play 44, kind of live in the kind of chalkness of different draft slot selections, now you're waiting all the way to get a wide receiver if that's your next move until Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. And even that, is nice, but is still a little bit of a reach, right? Still almost 10 picks according to the consensus big board. So, but look at all the players here that could seemingly be available to the Cowboys in the second and third round at running back, which is why, again, I just cannot justify a running back in the first round. I can barely justify a running back in the second round, but let's keep going here. Cornerback, I've said, and I said on Tuesday that if Will Johnson fell to the Cowboys at 12 overall, that's number 12. I think you can talk yourself into that. I think you can justify that. I think that can make sense. And then you can come, put together whatever amalgamation you want between running back and wide receiver. But corner is a position that you can also address, I don't want to say internally, but you have Deron Blaine, you have Trayvon Diggs, you technically have options in a way that you don't necessarily at wide receiver, which is why I lean this direction. But again, this was the article that Danny wrote. I see you, J. Patrick 20 in the comment section. Oh, I see Hot Mike User said Josh Ball bust. Yeah, we were talking about that. That was a bad pick for the Cowboys. I see J. Patrick 20 says, I'd love Golden in the first and Henderson or Johnson in the second. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. In this article that we're looking at bloggingtheboys.com that Danny Phantom wrote, he challenged our readers. And if you don't have an account at bloggingtheboys.com, I highly encourage you to get one because you can comment, and I interact in the comments a lot there. But most of the comments were fans, obviously, of waiting on running back, but specifically of taking TreVeyon Henderson with the Cowboys second round pick. And so I'm with you totally, J. Patrick 20. I'm a Ted McMillan fan, even though I'm a Sun Devil. But that being said, if the Cowboys walk away from the first 2 rounds of the draft, as much of a need as we can all acknowledge that corner is, right? We can be real and we can be fair and we can be objective and we can all be adults and say, yeah, we know that corner is in need. But like I'm saying, if I have to wait on one of the 3, if I have to, kind of procrastinate on one of them, I feel the best currently. I don't feel great, but I feel the best about the working options in the cornerback room specifically. I don't feel great about the wide receiver room at all. I feel fine about the running back room. I want TreVeyon Henderson because he's a great toy that can really help this offense. But I do think that Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders raise the floor and help the Cowboys at least have some competent players at the position. But to me, the most pressing need, the most absent shelf that you need to restock right now is at wide receiver. And if your first 2 picks are on offense, and not just on offense in general, but with offensive playmakers, you are seriously committing to scoring more points, right? You are seriously committing to lighting the scoreboard up or whatever you want to say, because you've now got, is from a playmaking standpoint, if you live in the hypothetical that I'm talking about here for a second, you've got CeeDee Lamb, Ted McMillan, TreVeyon Henderson, Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, if you want to say that, Jake Ferguson. And all of a sudden, if we talk about even from just a pass catching standpoint, because that's also the kind of pro or plus for TreVeyon Henderson, is that he can be a weapon in the passing game. So from a pass catching standpoint, option standpoint for Dak Prescott, you now have for him to work with CeeDee Lamb, Ted McMillan, TreVeyon Henderson out of the backfield, Jake Ferguson, who he is highly comfortable with, and Jalen Tolbert is now his 5th option. So in that world, I feel great about Jalen Tolbert, right? If Jalen Tolbert is the 5th option that I have to lean on in the passing game, or rather that I have to trust Dak Prescott to lean on, I feel wonderful. I'm singing a song. I'm doing a dance. But where we're at right now, Jalen Tolbert's kind of the 2nd option that Dak Prescott has to lean on in the passing game. And I mean no ill will towards Jalen Tolbert, because like I said, when we talked about the class of 2022 and the top 100 picks there, I think he tries very hard. I think he's worked very hard. I think he's done everything he can to become the player that we all sort of have hoped and needed him to be, but it just hasn't happened. And as awesome of a story as it would be if it were to come true here in 2025, banking and betting on that is simply irresponsible from a roster construction standpoint. But if again you go from Jalen Tolbert being your number 2 pass catching option from a dependency standpoint down to 5 because you've improved matters by adding Ted McMillan or even Golden, again, I'm fine with that. Now, all of a sudden, it's a very different world, especially if you improve the options in the backfield by way of a TreVeyon Henderson. I'm totally with that. I see that you agree. J. Patrick 20 said you agree 100%. So let's go back. I loved this part specifically of Danny Phantom's article. This is what he challenged people to do in the comments right here. Oops. Let's see if that'll work now. Well, let's just zoom in this way. Here we go. So Danny kind of broke things down by, again, consensus big board rankings and move it over so you can see that's perfect right there. So if we look at it this way, these are the ways that we can kind of, live, right? So we say, okay, Danny again did a great job of kind of breaking down. You kind of get to pick one from each box. So you get a first round pick, and if you're going to take a receiver in the first round, your legitimate options, presuming they're available and they haven't gone before you, obviously that goes without saying, are McMillan, Golden, and Ngbuka. If you're going to take a running back, it's Ashton Genty or Marion Hampton. If you're going to take a corner, I think the most likely one is Will Johnson, but Barron is an option as well. Obviously, if you really feel like pushing that needle, and if you really want to go Hairston, that's certainly a reach, but if maybe that's a trade back situation, right? We've talked about those things a lot, obviously, over the last few months. So let's live in the receiver running back amount. Let's go one by one. If the Cowboys take a receiver and let's say they go receiver, running back, cornerback. Let's go down the stairs. It's Ted McMillan, Travion Henderson, and Jacob Parrish. Boom. That's the best amalgamation to me. That's the best permutation. That's the best way that things can ultimately pull out. Now, I still stand by the fact that the Cowboys could walk away with a running back in the third round. And as you can see here, the second round options that Danny has listed are the two Buckeyes and Henderson and his teammate Quinshon Judkins. But in the third round, the Cowboys, if they waited, if they went corner or if they went receiver in the second round, in the third round, the Cowboys could get their runner and go Damian Martinez. Ollie Gordon is a big name. Cam Scadaboo, I'm always going to say, like I said, I'm a Sun Devil. I think that I'm okay with that. Like I think though, if I'm meeting in the middle, right? If we're all meeting in the middle, because we understand a legitimate need for a high quality running back, not to say that somebody like Martinez can't be that level of production for the Cowboys, but if we're meeting in the middle, I'm fine literally meeting in the middle of this matrix that Danny devised, right? Because if you go corner in the first round, say Will Johnson falls to you, great. I'm cool with that. And if you want to go running back in the second round, I still think that's a little bit rich. I would feel kind of, antsy not having a wide receiver yet by that point in time. I'd feel better if the Cowboys signed Tyler Lockett or something like that. Now all of a sudden I can make my peace with waiting at wide receiver, whatever the case may be. But if you told me that the Cowboys have either Ted McMillan or Will Johnson in the first round, Travion Henderson in the second round, and then have addressed the other need that they didn't in the first round in the third by way of somebody like Jacob Parrish, or obviously the news on Thursday changes our perspective on Isaiah Bond potentially. I think that that's okay. But I think we all fail to find a way in which you can build a trio here that you feel good about and that you can justify from a return on investment standpoint relative to the draft pick spin and the perceived value of the player relative to not only the consensus big board, but just general boards in general. General boards in general. There's a weird way to put that. That was a real Ted and Robin, How I Met Your Mother thing. But anyway, my point is I don't think you can start this path at running back and come away with a group that everybody says that was smart. That was the right way to do it. And I think that this is a good exercise from Danny and hopefully a good discussion here to prove that. Maybe you are somebody that has just fallen in love with Omarion Hampton. And I understand that if you're somebody who's fallen in love with Ashton Genty, that goes without saying. But it is very, very, very difficult to come away with all three of these positions with the first three picks specifically that the Cowboys have outside of some sort of trade-up scenario, which none of us, I don't think, would advocate for. It's very, very difficult to do it and to do it in good consciousness. And that's what you have to do here. We can't just sit here and say, oh, we'll trade up or, oh, this guy will fall or whatever. No, if we're playing the game and we're simulating it and we're mocking it or whatever, and we're assuming that it's going to go relatively chalk because there are always surprises. There are always players who fall. There's the Nakobe Deans of the world, and you can't explain it, whatever the case may be. But if you have to live off the example that Danny Phantom offered, I think that, again, I would just go down the stairs. I would go Ted McMillan. I would go Travion Henderson, and I would take Jacob Parrish. I would take his number one option at each position in the rounds that they are listed. And I'm fine, or maybe not fine, but I can make peace with waiting on corner, until the third round. Because again, as we discussed with those positions, at corner right now, you technically have options. It's shaky, right? Because we don't know what Trayvon Diggs is going to look like. We don't know how much he's going to play. You do have Deron Bland. That would encourage you, I would hope, to get an extension done with him so that you're not further up this creek. You technically did trade for Kaiir Elam. He's not far removed from being a first-round pick himself. Maybe you strike gold there the way you have in the past, right? You can help yourself sleep at night in that respect. And at running back, you can tell yourself, well, Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, they know what being a pro is like. They can handle, their 12 to 16 touches or whatever it is. they can help in a general sense in the run game. You cannot have this conversation in the same way at wide receiver. You can tell yourself certainly very easily, okay, got CeeDee Lamb. That's awesome. But who else? Like, what else do you have besides CeeDee Lamb? You got Jalen Tolbert. That's a real big question mark. You got Kevontae Turpin, who I have said many times I was wrong that he wouldn't. I said that I didn't think he would ever find a role on offense, and I was wrong on that. But I stand by the fact that I don't think they're going to use him a lot on offense because he's such a valuable returner. You have to be wise with him in a lot of different ways, especially now that the return, rules have changed a little bit more to work even more in the returner's advantage. So acknowledging that Kevontae Turpin is in a bit of a unique box, you have Ryan Flournoy, you have Jalen Brooks. I mean, I know that we haven't said Paris Campbell's name here. I mean, no disrespect to him either, but you have really CeeDee Lamb and a room. That's what you have. So you have to address this, and you cannot have it be last in this group. And because it has the lowest floor of the three positions in question, it stands to reason that you make it your highest level priority. And if we acknowledge that Travis Hunter is obviously going to be off the board by that point in time, but that he's his own unique unicorn, outside of Travis Hunter, again, he is who he is. You're getting the best receiver in the class, potentially, right? It's possible that McMillan goes. Maybe you think that the best receiver in the class is Matthew Golden, but again, consensus would suggest that it is T-Mac. That being said, it's very possible. We've all discussed this for months on end now, and certainly it's become a little bit more crystallized in the last couple of weeks. It's certainly possible that McMillan falls to the Cowboys and they get the best wide receiver only in the draft because of who Travis Hunter is and what he offers. And obviously we also have to see what position Travis Hunter is going to play the majority of snaps of at the professional level. So yeah, I have a very difficult time saying anything other than this path is the way to go. And this was a great exercise to prove that point, in my humble opinion, because if you take a running back in the first round, and that's ultimately what this kind of leads to, or I think is a result of this particular exercise, you are now cool. You have another running back. Maybe you feel really great about him. And if Genti falls, obviously that conversation changes a little bit, but you still have two massive questions at two really important positions, and you've just burned your most premium asset and opportunity to build upon them. Now, I wrote something for the site. I'm going to put this on your screen here before we get out of here. This is technically not out yet. Sometimes I share these things for you so you can see them, see a little bit how the sausage is made. So this will come out on Friday at the site. So check out blogontheboys.com. This time and date is here, but that's just the time and date that we started this conversation. So the title of the article was "Second Round Might Be the Running Back Sweet Spot for the Dallas Cowboys." Again, I obviously believe that because we've been talking about that. And we had a poll this past week at the site asking people how they would feel about running back in the first round. And a lot of people were really upset about it. One of our commenters, Blue Flash, I mentioned that you should create an account and comment. Blue Flash's comment is something that we incorporated into the article here. Give me T-Mac, Henderson, Parrish. I agree with that 100%. But I wanted to get to this. This is Jordan Reed at ESPN.com on Thursday. In his blurb, what we're hearing about the Cowboys draft. The Cowboys have been open about needing an explosive receiver opposite CeeDee, with Matthew Golden being heavily linked, blah, blah. Running back is also a need. While there's been talk about the Cowboys taking Omarion Hampton, not only talk, fellow ESPNer Mel Kiper mocked Hampton to the Cowboys earlier this week on Tuesday at number 12. It seems more likely that they'll use their second-round pick on a runner. Jordan goes on to mention that Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins are potential options in that spot. Again, it all makes sense. Look, the draft is 2 weeks from today, the day that this show is airing. Obviously, you could be watching it on Friday or Saturday when you're taking a break from the Masters. But if 2 weeks from tomorrow night, Friday night, if 2 weeks from tomorrow night, the Cowboys have Ted McMillan and Travion Henderson on their team, dude, I mean, look, I don't feel really good. And to put things in an overall sports perspective, I felt really great all day on Thursday about my pick, for the Masters being Rory McIlroy. I felt like I felt justified, and I felt like, it's finally going to happen. And then obviously things took a turn there at the very end. So even if things go the way I'm, kind of laying them out here that I want to see happen, I would still be scared, right? I would still be nervous because the Cowboys have burned us that deeply over the last few years. But this would be a significantly positive step forward. This would be a jump forward. This would be a leap forward relative to, we've been talking for years. It's been since, I would argue, 2022, pre-Tony Pollard's injury, that the Cowboys have had, if we live in the hypothetical, this many offensive playmakers, because at that point in time, they had obviously not Amari Cooper, but Michael Gallup was a serviceable player, to a degree. Jalen Tolbert was coming on, but CeeDee Lamb was really evolving. Dalton Schultz was still kind of a thing, right? Like you had Tony Pollard. That was the real big difference maker. That Tony Pollard in the passing game was a really, really, really big factor. So getting Ted McMillan, getting Trayvon Henderson, and then getting Jacob Parrish, dude, sign me up. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on X, Instagram, Threads at RJ Ochoa, TikTok, RJ.Ochoa. Search RJ Ochoa on Blue Sky. RJ.Ochoa at SBNation.com is how you email me. You can follow me in the Bleacher Report app right down below. You can see all the teams I root for, which, in addition to being burned by Rory McIlroy on Thursday, I was burned by Manchester United, because that's just who I am, apparently. Make sure you like the video and subscribe on the Blog of the Boys YouTube channel. And I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys a few more than normal times next week in the lead up to the NFL draft, and then certainly during the draft the following week. But for now, I bid you all adieu. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Thanks for hanging out.